Hey, what's going on, guys? Joseph Mills here with AutoMeter Garage, back at our home, Il Garage in Addison, Illinois. The newly expanded 600 square feet larger Il Garage. So happy to be back. Project Daily Driver. Folks, you may remember from the last video, we spun the WRX on the dyno, and it was not even as loud as the rollers on the dyno. So this car came from the factory with the Subaru Performance Sport exhaust, which isn't a bad sounding system. We're actually going to cut to a sound clip right now. You can hear what it sounds like from the outside. Now, that's not bad, but the problem is with a modern vehicle, the sound insulation is so much thicker and you don't hear any of it inside the car. So we need to change that, and that's what we aim to do today. We have a Cobb Tuning Catback Exhaust system for this vehicle, and while we're in messing around with it, we also have a Cobb Tuning Superflow intake system with a new bypass valve. Now, we used all of these parts on Project Evo to great success. Loved the fit and finish, loved the build quality, so it only stands to reason that that's what we'd use on Project Daily Driver here. So without further ado, we're going to start taking this bad boy apart and doing some much needed improvements. So we're going to start with our exhaust. This is actually quite easy because we've got two separate mufflers here, so just going to go ahead and get these off. So yeah, these are just 14 millimeters. So with our bolts undone, we're going to slide the rearmost hanger free, and that'll allow us to then get the front one. I got it. So you can see right here, these factory mufflers are considerably larger than the nice Cobb replacements that we've got. And then just repeat on the other side while the suspension drips ice all over you. Okay, onto this section of piping here. You've got a 14 mil on one side and a 12 mil on the other. So, being Midwesterners, these are going to be a bit stiff. This car having done a few miles with the stock exhaust. So there's just one hanger here, and as you can see, this has a little nub on it. So anytime you've got a difficult exhaust hanger, I'm a fan of just putting a channel lock on it, popping her off. So reinstallation is literally just reversing it. Start with the one closer to the front of the vehicle, with a little lubricant on there, get them hanging. It should be noted that that mid pipe, there's not a hanger on it, so you want to get the mufflers up first, so we've got something to balance the mid pipe. So due to the much larger diameter of the Y pipe, this particular hanger right here, what you're going to want to do is put a screwdriver or some kind of prying device to lower that down so you can thread it in properly. So you can see we've got quite an angle, and after stretching this down, you just kind of need to, sometimes you need to persuade it with a hammer a little bit. If you look at the angle, now that we're in, we can pull it down and straighten everything back out. With the Y pipe finally up, we're going to loosely put everything together, because on a twin exit exhaust like this, you really want to adjust everything so it looks nice. Now, Cobb includes some real nice replacement gaskets, as well as some excellent hardware. So we're just going to kind of line everything up here. We got one bolt in already. We're going to put this mid pipe section on. Now, we're reusing the factory donut gasket because honestly, it looks fine on this vehicle. A little bit easier if you have a friend help you to hold everything in place. New gasket right here. Now, if you don't have any friends, you should probably do this much lower to the ground. So here we're going to reuse the spring-loaded hardware that the factory gave us. This is in really good shape as well. Larger diameter pipe means that 14 is a little bit harder to get to than it was before, and then again 12 on the other side. We're going to take our two 14s here. We're going to start to snug up the mufflers We still want to be able to move it around, but we want to get them just about to the point that we would torque them. That's going to help us get the appearance right on the back of the vehicle. Now we've got everything straightened up in the back. Just go through, snug it all up. Guys, I would normally never say this because I'm sure there is a torque spec, but these are non-load bearing. It really doesn't matter. Get them snug. You don't have to kill them. Just get it nice and tight. And if you're in the Midwest, the salt will make sure that they never come undone anyways. Everything's adjusted quite nicely. Let's hear what just the catback sounds like. That is quite a bit nicer. With our new catback exhaust system on the vehicle, exhaust gases can leave much quicker. Now let's worry about getting air in a little faster. That's where our new intake system comes in. So to do our installation, we're going to start very simply, Phillips head screwdriver, and we are going to remove the mass airflow sensor, which is located right at the back of this air box here. Now you want to be particularly careful not to damage this because, well, they're quite expensive. So with the mass airflow sensor removed, we're just going to unclip that from the connector. Now pro tip here, we want to keep this safe, so we can take the pipe that we're going to be using later, drop the mass airflow sensor in, and Cobb includes new hardware with the kit, and they even provided us IKEA style with the correct Allen head key. Now we're going to remove the front air snorkel here, so just a little flathead in there. That'll pull these clips up, unclip this, snorkels out. To remove the factory air box, we've got two 10 millimeters, one right here, and the other one straight down. You're going to want to use an extension to get to it. With those loosened, we can pull the factory air box out. Look at the size of this thing. We've got like a silencer, maybe that's a moisture tank right there, but just tons and tons of room down there with that out of the way. Not sure whether to blame an engineer or an assembler here, but for some reason Subaru decided to put the head of the hose clamp facing straight down, so we won't be doing that, putting this back together. And very simply, we're going to get this bracket out of the way, two 10 millimeters. So with that out of the way, now let's put the car up in the air and start removing the under trays. Okay, with the vehicle up in the air, we've got two 12 millimeters, one right here and one right here that'll come down, and then 13 plastic clips you get off with a flathead. Now, judging from the yellow paint I'm seeing right there, it would appear that the previous owner of this Subaru WRX took full advantage of their skid plate technology. So if you're just doing the intake, you can skip this next step, but because we have a new bypass valve, we're also going to remove a 10 millimeter right here so we can access this wheel well area, as well as we're going to drop the skid plate. The skid plate is all for 12 millimeters. We're now going to remove the stock intake piping. There's a bracket right here, which is a 10 millimeter. We can quickly undo. It's actually quite loose on ours. Now, this bracket up in here, if you can see that, does not actually need to be reused. So right around the corner, there's a 12 millimeter that we can get off and just remove the bracket completely. So we'll call that our weight reduction project for this round. So with those brackets out of the way, we are literally just going to pull off this hose clamp here. Get that nice and loose, and then we will remove this whole deal from the turbo, and would you look at that? We got a whole convoluted, complicated intake tube, this thing has got to be quite restrictive. To get to the bypass valve, we're going to remove these breather hoses. And then we've got one more hose on the bypass valve right there that needs to come up. Good settle needle nose will take those right off. And it looks like we've got another spring clip right here. That's not super easy to get to, but there we go. Little bit of creativity. With all those out of the way, it's going to be easier to get an 8 mil in there to undo that hose clamp. Everything's unhooked. Now we've got two 12 millimeters on this composite piece going to the turbocharger. And we'll just wiggle that guy free. That's out of the way. We've got very easy access to remove the stock bypass valve. So you can see here we've got the factory bypass valve and then the Cobb unit here. So we're going to prepare this to go on. Cobb gives us some little studs and a little bit of Loctite here. Just a little dab will do you on the thread sealant with the included not IKEA Allen wrench. We're going to put a plug in right here. And then we put a plug in on the opposite side as well. And then finally we'll put this little port on the top, and that's going to be an 8 millimeter wrench. Just snug that down, let the Loctite do its job. Okay, we're going to reinstall the bypass valve. Now, one thing worth noting, I loosened this clamp up all the way and reinstalled it in the other direction because it was a pain in the butt to get to before, and it won't be now. There's a close-up of the clamp that I'm referring to right there. But yeah, definitely reverse that one if you're going to pull the bypass valve. You can see this boost reference hose on the top of the bypass valve. We trim that down just a tiny bit to fit there. And then always a good habit, and a string of zip tie in there, just a little bit of security to keep that nice and tight under all boost pressure levels. All right, now we slide this part of the turbo inlet back on. Definitely worth taking that spring clip, moving it around this direction so it's a little bit easier should you need to access it in the future. Two 12 millimeter bolts secures it back to the turbo. Here's that spring clip that we turned about 90 degrees. Got that reconnected there. We just got to do our two breathers. Right now I slid the little 45 degree silicone sleeve on there, and then we can feed up our new intake tube. Now with our pipe run through, we don't want to tighten anything up yet. We're going to need to make some adjustments to it to get everything lined up. So the easiest way to do that is we're going to start with our airbox piece right here. Now you can see around the edges, comes with some nice weather stripping that we put on there. So we're going to take this, and you kind of got to squeeze it a little bit to manipulate it into place. And be careful. I don't know if it's like this on the regular cars, but this one has factory HIDs, and the harness is awfully close. And there we go. And that's going to use those factory mounting points that we took off before. So all good right there. Using this factory mounting location and this included bracket with gasket material, we'll loop that around the pipe. That'll keep that nice, quiet, secured. That goes on over the bracket, and we drop our 10 mils back on there. That's going to serve as a nice structural piece for the front of our airbox. We've also attached our 10 millimeter here and our 10 millimeter down there that we removed during disassembly. And this thing is quite rigid now. Okay, we finish two 10 mils on the front of our new Cobb airbox right here. Now, as part of the new piping, the mass airflow sensor has to be relocated. Thankfully, good folks at Cobb have thought about just about everything, so we have this neat little MAF extension harness. Now, you want to fish the original MAF harness underneath the airbox. Plug that in right there, and you can see our MAF is facing forward right there. We just plug her in, and the MAF is reconnected. So not that we're ones to read instructions or anything like that. But folks at Cobb said this was the most important part of the install. It's in bold, the instructions. They said measure 1 inch from the edge of the pipe and mark it, and that is where the very outside edge of the air filter will go. Of course, we used a black Sharpie, which is probably not visible here, but under the lights we can definitely see the reflective area. So I imagine that probably has to do with the MAF scaling or something else very important. So make sure, if you follow no other steps from this video, follow that step right there. So then we pop the factory snorkel in place. Don't be afraid to put a little pressure on this thing. You do kind of gotta stuff it right in there, and then you'll see all of our holes line up for the factory clips that we removed earlier. That'll give us nice cool air from the front of the vehicle. Okay, with our snorkel installed, we've got some more hardware to attach the top of the box, complete with our IKEA wrench here. This top one right here goes all the way through. This is going to be the trickiest one. The other ones have a little bit more leniency in how they go together. Alrighty, so with this all adjusted, you can kind of see the angle of the piping right here. We have adequate pipe going through to the airbox. Now we're just going to put the skid plate back on the vehicle, as we won't need to work underneath that again. And then we'll tune the car, start her up, check everything for leaks, and see how she works. So with all of our parts installed, we go into our tuning function. We're going to select Change Map. Accessport will talk to it. We will do a permanent flash because we have permanent modifications on here. And what we are looking for is going to be our Stage 1 91 big SF intake high wastegate. So we're going to select that map right there. Now the high wastegate is really just if you are not hitting your boost targets. On this particular map, we're looking for give or take 19 psi of peak boost, trailing off to the RPM limit of about 6,900 RPM. So we flashed a new map on. Only takes about a minute since we've already installed the Accessport onto the vehicle. Everything's set to go. Again, really impressed with the fit and finish of all the parts that we bought from the good folks at Cobb Tuning for our WRX here. Nice, easy install. Sounds good so far, just hearing the Catback. I think now we take her outside and get some real sound clips for you. So I'll leave you on that. Until next time, Joseph Mills, AutoMeter Garage. Thank you so much for watching.